"Has Leo come home yet?" the nanny, Maria, asked. "He sent over the divorce papers," Chloe replied. "He won't be coming back." Chloe had told me she couldn't pick me up from the airport because she was swamped with work, but the first thing I saw when I walked into the arrivals hall was her, wrapped in the arms of her first love, Daniel, who had just returned to the country. I didn't make a sound. I just turned around, walked back to the ticketing counter, and booked the first available flight to any city that wasn't this one. Later that evening, around 10:30, Chloe finally arrived home. The first thing she noticed was my absence. When Maria informed her I hadn't returned, a knot of unease tightened in her stomach. She immediately dialed my number, but I didn't answer. A flicker of panic set in, and she began calling again and again, only to be met with a persistent, busy signal. I had been back in my hometown for a few days, looking after my father who had fallen ill. When I was ready to return, I called Chloe, and she promised she would be at the airport to pick me up. Not even a minute after we hung up, my phone rang again. It was her, telling me something urgent had come up at the office and she wouldn't be able to make it. I would have to find my own way back. I understood, or at least I told myself I did. The company was in the middle of preparing for its IPO, and I knew things were chaotic. I told her not to worry about it. But then, standing there in the bustling terminal, seeing her locked in an embrace with him, my heart felt like it had plummeted into an icy abyss. The noise and chaos of the airport suddenly went silent, and a strange, cold calm washed over me. I walked straight to the nearest airline desk and asked for the next flight out, anywhere. "There's one leaving for Port City," the agent said. "I'll take it," I replied without hesitation. Port City was over 500 kilometers away from our home in Deep City. It was a place I had always dreamed of visiting, but had never found the time. Now, the place I had longed to see was waiting for me on that next flight, while the city I desperately needed to escape was right here, behind me. I used to fantasize about taking a spontaneous trip, just getting up and going, but the reality of it felt nothing like the dream. It was tinged with a profound sadness. It turned out I could just leave without having to worry if she was taken care of, without needing to manage all the small, intricate details of her daily life. It turned out I could simply vanish one day. 5 years of marriage, and yet Daniel's shadow loomed over everything. There were moments, more than I could count, where I felt like the outsider, the one who didn't belong in their story. Seeing them together at the airport, I suddenly realized I couldn't bear it for a second longer. I managed to find a hotel and check in before my phone started ringing. It was Chloe. I stared at her name on the screen, hesitating for a long moment before letting it go to voicemail. Once inside the room, the phone began buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. I finally picked it up and, with a sense of finality, powered it down. Then I slept. When Chloe got home at 10:30 that night, she expected to find me on the living room sofa, watching television and waiting for her, just like any other night. Instead, she found only Maria. She stared at the empty sofa, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. After a moment, she turned to the nanny. "Where's Leo? Hasn't he come home from his father's place?" Chloe was taken aback. "What? His flight landed at 6:20, a few minutes before Daniel's. He should have been home by 7:30 at the latest." She glanced at the clock on the wall, a heavy feeling of unease and guilt starting to creep in. She had broken her promise. She hadn't picked me up. After she'd hung up with me, Daniel had called, announcing his return and asking if she could get him from the airport. She had instinctively agreed, not wanting to create an awkward situation. She figured I could just take a cab home. But I wasn't home. The thought spurred her into action. She quickly dialed my number. The phone rang and rang until it finally clicked over to voicemail. Chloe frowned. This was not like me at all. I would never intentionally ignore her calls. A knot of fear began to form in her stomach. Had something happened? Feeling deeply unsettled, she tried again. This time, after a few rings, she was met with a busy signal. Her brow furrowed, and her expression darkened. She kept redialing, but the monotonous beep of the busy signal was all she heard. Clutching her phone tightly, she had the sinking realization that something was suddenly, irrevocably spiraling out of her control. It was clear I had blocked her. Chloe couldn't understand it. Why was I so upset with her? The question hung in the air, unanswered. The next morning, I finally switched my phone back on. The screen lit up with notifications. 10 missed calls and a handful of messages. Only 2 of the calls were from Chloe. The rest were from our nanny, Maria. I found a strange, dark humor in that. It seemed the nanny was more concerned about my well-being than my own wife. Then again, for Chloe, calling me twice was already a significant effort. Usually she only called when she needed something from me, and I, in turn, would always answer immediately. If I ever missed one of her calls, I would spend the next 10 minutes profusely apologizing and explaining I had been busy, an explanation she never seemed to care to hear. She just found my excuses annoying. "Just keep your phone on you so I can always reach you," she would say. In other relationships, that might sound sweet. From her, it just made me feel small, like a tool to be used only when needed. Otherwise, I might as well not exist. Having finally processed this reality, I sent a text message to Maria, asking her to tell Chloe that I wouldn't be coming back for a while. After a quiet breakfast, I stretched out on a deck chair on my hotel balcony, staring out at the vast expanse of the sea. Port City was a coastal town, and the weather was perfect, neither too hot nor too cold. It was ideal for simply doing nothing. I sipped on a fresh coconut, savoring the simple, easy moment. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. On a whim, I answered it. A clear, confident male voice came through the line. "Hello, is this Leo?" It was Daniel. I raised an eyebrow, a little surprised he had my number, but then it made sense. Through Chloe, he could get anything. "What do you want?" I asked, skipping any pleasantries. Daniel chuckled, a sound laced with scorn. "You've known about me all along, haven't you? Chloe and I are childhood sweethearts. We were each other's first love. I went abroad to pursue my dreams, and she married you out of spite. You're aware of that, right? I'm back now, and I'm back for her. I hope you get the hint and step aside." I couldn't help but laugh. Are mistresses really this bold these days? To him, I supposed I was the one who was the interloper. As the saying goes, the one who isn't loved is the third wheel. If you want to go back to picking up leftovers, she's all yours. If you can convince Chloe to file for divorce, I'll even give you both my blessing. After saying my piece, I hung up. I made sure to save the recording of the call. It might serve as useful leverage for the divorce compensation. Then, I blocked his number. What a way to ruin a perfectly peaceful morning. Even hiding out in a different city, I couldn't escape the noise. Daniel certainly knew how to make his presence felt. This marriage was definitively over. After Maria relayed my message, Chloe's expression immediately darkened. She was determined to wait and see what game I was playing. But a week passed with no word from me. No calls, no texts, nothing. She checked the number Maria had called from and discovered it was a landline registered in Port City. A strange feeling settled over her. She was realizing just how little she actually knew about her own husband. She didn't even know I had friends in Port City. Staring at the framed photograph of us on her desk, Chloe found herself lost in thought. It was taken on the first day we were officially together. In the picture, I was smiling so brightly, my eyes crinkling at the corners. She, for some reason she couldn't recall, was looking at me instead of the camera. One day, that photo had just appeared on her desk. A young intern from the secretarial pool had told her it was a man's way of declaring ownership. Chloe had just laughed at the time, thinking I was just like other men, focused on such trivialities. But she had never taken the photo down. Suddenly, a hand reached out and took the frame from her desk. Chloe looked up to see Daniel standing there. She frowned. "What are you doing here?" Seeing her displeasure, Daniel's expression soured. "Chloe, should I not have come to see you?" He placed the frame back on her desk. "I heard from Maria that Leo left. I'm really worried about you. Was it because I asked you to pick me up from the airport? Is that why he's unhappy? It's all my fault." His voice grew heavy, and he began to sniffle quietly. "No," Chloe responded, feeling an odd sense of irritation. For some reason, she was thinking about how I rarely ever cried. Even at our own wedding, I had maintained my composure. The only time she had ever seen me cry was because of her. She had been in a minor car accident that left her with a small cut, and she remembered how tears had streamed down my face, my eyes red and raw, as if I were the one who had been injured. A pang of something she couldn't name resonated deep in her chest. Just then, a knock came from her office door. "President, the meeting is about to begin." After Chloe left, Daniel lingered for a moment, his eyes fixed on the photo frame. With a furtive glance toward the door, he picked it up and shoved it into the bottom drawer of her desk. That night, back in the villa, Chloe stood in the master bedroom, lost in her memories. Every corner of this room was filled with my presence. Everything, from the meticulously organized wardrobe to the small, tasteful decorations on the shelves, had been arranged by me. She remembered the look on my face when I first showed it to her, a mixture of anxiety and eager anticipation. She had kissed me then, and she recalled how my face had unexpectedly turned bright red. I had lightly punched my own chest in a gesture of boyish embarrassment, avoiding her gaze. Her phone suddenly rang, pulling her from her reverie. It was an unfamiliar number. She was about to ignore it, but answered it anyway. "Hello, Chloe, it's me." The moment I spoke the first word, she knew it was me. Her hand, holding the phone, trembled slightly. Before I could continue, she snapped, "Leo, have you had enough of your tantrum? If you've had your fill, then come back. You know this isn't the time for this. My company is about to go public. Why are you doing this now?" I didn't respond immediately. "Say something, Leo," she demanded. Her eyes fierce, her grip on the phone so tight her knuckles turned white. "I'm not throwing a tantrum, Chloe," I said calmly. "I sent you a package. It should arrive tomorrow. Look it over, and if everything seems fine, please sign it." Chloe's face darkened even further. She had never expected me to speak to her with such cold detachment. "What package?" "The divorce papers," I replied. "I've had enough of the last 5 years, Chloe. I don't want to continue." A heavy silence hung between us. I waited patiently for her to respond. "When are you coming back?" she finally asked. "I'll come back to finalize everything once you've signed the papers," I said, my gaze fixed on the snowy night outside my window. "Leo, what are you really up to?" Another silence fell before I let out a cold, humorless chuckle. "You think I'm just making a fuss to get your attention? So be it then." I hung up the phone. Chloe immediately tried to call back, but the person who answered was a stranger. He explained that he was just a traveler in Port City, and that the man who had borrowed his phone had already left. After hanging up, Chloe stood motionless by the large window, staring out into the night. In 5 years of marriage, everyone had always said that I was the ideal husband. I always greeted people with a warm smile and never seemed to lose my temper. Everyone liked me, even the employees at her company. They liked me so much that she had almost forgotten that our marriage was not one born from love. It was a matter of duty. My grandfather had saved her grandfather and her father years ago, a debt of honor her family felt they owed. It was almost comical that the repayment for this debt was her hand in marriage. In the bathroom, Chloe splashed cold water on her face, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside her. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her professional suit was wrinkled, the collar askew. Deep frown lines were etched into her forehead, and red veins were visible in her tired eyes. She hadn't slept well in days. Every time her hand brushed against the empty side of the bed, she would wake up with a start and stay awake for the rest of the night. Chloe couldn't understand why her emotions were suddenly so volatile. She was usually the master of the poker face. She sighed heavily, left the bathroom, and after one glance at the empty double bed, she turned and went to sleep in the guest room. The next day was Saturday, and Chloe, uncharacteristically, woke up late. She came downstairs with heavy, dark circles under her eyes. Daniel, who was already in the living room, looked up and called out to her. She just furrowed her brow slightly and gave a soft reply. "This package just arrived for you," Maria said, handing her a delivery envelope. Daniel got up from the couch and walked over to Chloe's side. With quick, decisive movements, Chloe tore open the package. Without even bothering to read the documents inside, she shredded the divorce papers and tossed the pieces into the trash can. Daniel, who had peered over her shoulder, was shocked when he saw the documents. He couldn't help but let out a surprised gasp, though he wasn't exactly upset by the development. "Chloe, don't be so mad," he said, gently tugging at her sleeve in a soft, comforting gesture. "Leo's just angry. He doesn't really want a divorce. I even tried to advise him. Honestly, it's all my fault for coming back." Tears began to well up in his eyes. Chloe remained completely unfazed. "What does this have to do with you?" "It's his own pettiness. He thinks he can make me come begging for him to come back, but he's wrong." Daniel's eyes were now filled with tears as he looked at her. "Chloe, don't worry. I'll talk to Leo again. If he's misunderstanding me, I can leave the city." Chloe instinctively tried to comfort him. "You don't need to do that. What's between Leo and me doesn't require you to get involved." Then she asked, "Did you have breakfast yet? If not, join me." Daniel sniffled and managed a weak smile. "I haven't eaten yet." The two of them then headed to the dining room. Meanwhile, Maria stood by, silently fuming. She cursed Daniel under her breath. Her gentleman, the kindest and most considerate man she knew, was being treated this way all because of this man. She knew she had to keep a close eye on Daniel. As he sipped his porridge, he couldn't help but wonder why Chloe had shredded the divorce papers. Did she actually want to stay married to Leo? Perhaps he needed to do something to help the situation along. The day I left, I finally accepted that I was not as important to Chloe as Daniel was. After an entire week of complete silence from her, and hearing only from my rival, I knew I had to be the one to reach out. When I finally called, she offered no words of concern or comfort, only criticism. In that moment, any lingering hope I might have had for our marriage evaporated. I knew that divorce was the only right choice. I remembered when Daniel had first fled abroad. Chloe had moved heaven and earth to track him down, ultimately staying by his side for 2 full months. That one act said everything that needed to be said. I was finally beginning to understand just how foolish I had been. Another week passed, meaning I had been in Port City for half a month. I never expected to see Chloe standing in the lobby of my hotel one morning. The weather outside was miserable, a dreary mix of snow and rain. She, however, was impeccably dressed, a vision of power and elegance that turned heads as she gazed intently between the front desk and the exit. By comparison, I felt utterly plain. My hair was a mess under a wool hat, and I was clutching a paper bag containing my breakfast of soy milk, donuts, and buns. Being with her always made me feel insignificant, but I had finally come to terms with it. A simple meal from a street vendor should never share a table with a 5-star delicacy. Perhaps Chloe and I should never have begun in the first place. She spotted me and approached with that confident stride of hers, dragging the suitcase I had brought with me. I stood my ground, my hands clenched tightly at my sides. Her gaze swept over me, steady and unreadable. "Your luggage is packed." Looking down at my breakfast bag, she added, "Eat on the way." "The papers," I said, my voice even. "Did you sign them? If you did, I'll go with you right now to get the license." For a moment, she just stared at me. Then, she grabbed my arm and pulled me along toward the black car that was waiting outside. Once we were inside, she finally spoke. "Now is not the time for a divorce. You know that. It can remain a private matter," I assured her. "Leo," she said, her voice laced with frustration. "Grandpa's birthday is next Tuesday. You have to be with me at the dinner." I had underestimated her before, thinking she was somehow gentle and naive. She smirked coldly. "You should know by now that you don't threaten me." And she was right. I couldn't threaten her. In her eyes, my stubbornness was nothing more than a childish attempt to get her attention. I had managed to capture her appetite and her body, but never her heart. How can women separate their hearts and bodies so completely? I despaired silently, then said, "If you sign the papers, I will accompany you to the dinner. And don't worry, our divorce will not be made public." I had no sooner finished speaking than she spun around and punched the back of the seat behind me with all her might. The force of it was startling, and an overwhelming fear washed over me. It was the first time I had ever seen her look so menacing. I instinctively cowered in the back seat, too scared to even open my eyes. After a long, tense moment, she reached for my head, but her hand stopped just short of touching it. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and firm. "Just listen to me. We are not getting divorced." Back at the villa, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Daniel greeted us as if he owned the place. "Leo, you're finally back!" he exclaimed, approaching me eagerly with his arms open for a hug. I sidestepped him without a word. I stood 2 meters away, watching him quietly. He exuded an air of polished sophistication from head to toe. It was evident he had put a great deal of thought into his appearance. Standing together, he and Chloe really did look like a perfect match. Meanwhile, standing there with Maria, I felt like we belonged to a completely different world. Chloe frowned. "Leo, where have your manners gone?" "It's fine, Chloe. Leo didn't mean it. He's still upset with me," Daniel said, his eyes welling up with tears, looking for all the world like he was about to cry. I remained silent, calmly watching them perform their little show. The air grew thick and heavy. Finally, Daniel broke the stalemate. He instructed Maria to take Chloe's luggage upstairs, but Maria completely ignored him, casting him a sharp, sidelong glare instead. She walked over to me, took my hands in hers, her touch filled with genuine concern. "I made your favorites," she said warmly. "Sweet and sour spare ribs and stir-fried celery with squid." As she spoke, she drew me into the house. Chloe and Daniel followed us in and sat down at the dining table. The moment Chloe saw the squid on the table, her eyebrow furrowed. Oh, right. She was allergic to seafood. We hadn't had a single seafood dish on our table since we started accommodating her tastes. But I loved seafood. Before marrying her, I would have it at least 5 days a week. Except for when I was visiting my dad, who would always cook a seafood feast for me, I could count on one hand the number of times I'd eaten it in the past 5 years. For her, I didn't just change my diet. My entire lifestyle had shifted. Because of her demanding job, she had irregular meals and suffered from severe gastritis. She often came home late, and no matter the hour, I would always make her a light, stomach-friendly meal and wait for her. I'd eat with her, and then we would go to bed together. "Maria, there won't be any more seafood in this house," Chloe ordered coldly. I swallowed the piece of squid I had just put in my mouth and looked at her. "Don't worry. After we're divorced, there won't be any seafood on your table, Leo." Chloe was now completely furious. I said nothing more, quietly enjoying my favorite dishes. At this point, I truly had no desire to communicate with her at all. All I wanted was to enjoy my meal in peace, and for her to sign the divorce papers soon so we could make it official. The day of her grandfather's birthday party finally arrived. I wore the luxurious suit Chloe's secretary had prepared for me, and we walked into the grand banquet hall together. As we entered, all eyes turned to us. For a moment, we outshone even the main event. To the outside world, we seemed like the ideal couple, talented and beautiful. Of course, it was only after I was dressed up in expensive clothes that I managed to match the talent part of that description. Most days I preferred a plain, comfortable look and didn't fuss over my appearance. But overall, people saw me as a skilled manager of the household, a man who provided seamless hospitality and unwavering support for his brilliant wife. As for Chloe, her status went without saying. Putting aside her powerful family ties, she had started her own company at a young age, and it was now on the verge of going public. She had become one of the most desirable and admired women in the city. However, the guests' attention soon shifted. Daniel arrived, and he had brought his parents with him. Their family was also a well-known and respected name in the city. If Chloe hadn't been obligated to marry me due to our family's arrangement, they might very well still have been together, and openly so. Years ago, Chloe had caused quite a stir when she went searching for Daniel, and the entire city's elite knew the story. So when Daniel showed up, a wave of whispers and gossip rippled through the crowd. Despite their complicated history, it wasn't surprising that Chloe's family had invited Daniel and his parents to the party. There were numerous business collaborations between the two families. They wouldn't let a small matter of personal history get in the way of that. As for my feelings, I was well aware of the situation, so I felt nothing but a dull numbness inside. But I didn't expect Chloe, the woman who insisted she would not divorce me, to leave me standing alone in the middle of our dance, in front of everyone, to rush over to Daniel, anxiously hugging him as if he were in distress. She then left the banquet hall with him, and I didn't see her again for the rest of the night. When Chloe returned the next morning, we were at breakfast. She casually mentioned, "Daniel has a child." Her indifference was truly irksome. I tried to hide my anger, but the whiteness of my clenched fists gave me away. "Is that so? Then." Before I could finish congratulating her, Chloe interrupted me. "Don't worry, I'm not the child's mother," she said, watching me closely as if gauging my reaction. I looked up at her. My distressed heart suddenly felt a fraction lighter. I knew Chloe wouldn't stoop so low, not even for Daniel. After a silent sigh of relief, I said, "This doesn't concern me. You don't need to explain anything to me. After we're divorced, you can be the child's stepmother if you want." Chloe didn't flinch. She calmly wiped her mouth with a napkin and then stood up, looking down at me. "Dad is still ill. Do you really want to worry him with this?" I realized then that she was absolutely certain that I couldn't leave her. She was sure that my concern for my father's health would keep me tethered to her. My relationship with Chloe had always been one of happenstance. At the time we met, she was just returning from abroad after chasing after Daniel. Coincidentally, I found her drowning her sorrows in a bar. I had been drugged, and in a strange twist of fate, Chloe ended up saving me. A month later, we found out she was pregnant. Her family, eager to avoid a scandal, pushed her to marry me. But 5 months into our marriage, the child was gone. It happened on the very night Chloe flew to America to find Daniel again. Losing the child was devastating, but the doctor's next words shattered my world completely. He told me that due to medical complications from the miscarriage, It was highly unlikely we would ever be able to have children. During my darkest, most painful time, Chloe was on another continent with her first love. My dad rushed to my side, staying with me through that unbearable night. Afterward, he gave me some advice. "Sometimes it's just not worth it," he told me. He reminded me of the carefree person I used to be before I met her. "Loving someone shouldn't mean hurting yourself, son. Love is supposed to be mutual. A one-sided obsession is just self-destruction. People keep telling you that you married well, that you have good fortune. But you and I both know that a man's worth isn't measured by who he marries. It's about finding your own purpose in life. I know you're tiptoeing around her and her family because of what we owe them, and it pains me to see you like this. I hope you can find the strength to leave and get back to being that happy boy you were." Chloe, it seemed, had played her cards wrong this time. Since that day at the party, she had started coming home early every evening. She brought me gifts, a new watch one day, a new game console the next, sometimes just some little knick-knack she thought I might like. Even though I remained cold and distant, she didn't seem to mind. It was as if my attitude didn't matter to her at all. She just kept up her routine. I knew this was her way of trying to soften me up. Every time Chloe went too far, and I showed that I was genuinely upset, this was how she tried to make it up to me. She told me not to worry, that Daniel had gone to Singapore to take care of his child, and that he wouldn't be bothering us anymore. "I have nothing with him," she insisted. "He's just like family." But I was done listening. I had been disappointed far too many times. When Daniel was still living in the States, she would fly to visit him several times a year. The deep winter weather was oppressive, casting a gloomy mood over everything. I tried to shake off the feeling by watching some games on TV, but just a few minutes in, my phone began to ring incessantly, as if it wouldn't stop until I picked it up. With a heavy sigh, I answered. "Bring the papers from my desk to the office," Chloe said without preamble. "Okay," I replied on instinct, before realizing I should have said no. But she had already hung up. Feeling a bit helpless, I called her back, but she didn't pick up. After another deep sigh, I decided I might as well just take them over to her. When I arrived at her office, the administrative assistant informed me that Chloe was in a meeting and asked me to wait in her office. As I walked in, the space felt both familiar and strange. Before, I used to be here several times a week, bringing her homemade meals. Her gastritis had been quite severe, and I had insisted that eating out so much was bad for her. I had even hired a chef to teach me how to cook, and every day I would prepare dishes for her that were both nutritious and delicious. Thanks to my efforts, her stomach had gotten a lot better. But now, after just a month away, the place felt like it belonged to someone else. Suddenly, my eyes were drawn to her desk. I noticed something was missing. Our first photo together. The one picture I treasured more than any other because it was the only one where she was looking directly at me, was gone. My heart felt a little heavy. Some pains, I was learning, just don't fade in a month. After placing the documents on her desk, I sent her a text letting her know I was leaving and that I would have dinner ready. I cooked the exact same dishes I had made for her on the very first night I cooked for her. When Chloe arrived home and saw me in the same slacks and shirt I had worn when we first met, she seemed surprised. "Are you going out?" she asked. To her, I only ever dressed up for business occasions, preferring comfortable clothes at home. I smiled a small, sad smile. "No, I'm not going out. Dinner's ready. Come join me." Her gaze deepened as she walked over and wrapped her arms around me, whispering my name over and over again. Leo, Leo, Leo. She always said my name like that when she was being playful or affectionate, and this time was no different. "Let Maria prepare your favorite seafood," she said as we sat down to eat. "Don't worry about me. I'll have something else." It seemed she had completely forgotten. This was the first meal I had ever cooked for her. Some things are treasured by one person, but treated as completely ordinary by another. You can't fake the details. Chloe had left me at the airport once, and that was when my eyes had finally opened. Now, none of it mattered anymore. This meal was our last dinner together. The next day, after she left for work, I packed my bags and left the villa for the last time. This time I returned to my dad's house. When I told him I had decided to divorce Chloe, he seemed to have already sensed that something had changed. He just hugged me tightly. "Leo, it's good to have you back," he said. "It's just good to have you back." Then he took my hand and led me upstairs. My cold hand slowly began to feel warmer in his. Later that night, I noticed Chloe's car parked outside my childhood home. Her face was stern, her lips pressed into a thin, tight line. My dad, who was taking a walk with me, saw her too and wanted to go over and confront her. But I gently shook my head. "Dad, I'll handle it. You go on inside." Chloe strode up to me and grabbed my shoulders. "Leo, what is going on? Don't you get it? I don't understand. Aren't we good now?" Her voice quivered, losing its usual confidence. Good? For 5 years, our semblance of being okay was just me, fighting desperately to keep it all together. I gave up my pride, my freedom, and my own life to patch up our crumbling relationship. I shook her hands off my shoulders. "Just sign the divorce papers, Chloe. I won't take a single thing from you, and I won't announce it publicly." "I will not agree to a divorce," she replied firmly. Her stubbornness surprised me, but I felt little else. "Then I'll sue for divorce," I said calmly. "It will affect your image, and maybe even your company's listing." Chloe's eyes widened, and she looked like she was about to speak, but I interrupted her. "Don't make me lose the last shred of respect I have for you, Chloe. Clinging to something that's over isn't your style. Go back, and don't look for me again." She finally agreed to meet me at the Civil Affairs Bureau to finalize the proceedings. On the day I received the divorce certificate, I booked a flight home. Chloe drove me to the airport. While we were waiting for my flight to board, she seemed like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just told me to take care of myself. As I walked away toward my gate, I felt no longing, no sadness, and no need to look back. The first time we were at this airport, she had left me. This time she had truly lost me. But I was free. The weather was bright, the sun was shining everywhere, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I could see further than ever before.